You can start.
Larry does the commissioner's budget,
Okay.
human resources budget.
Okay.
You can start.
Okay. I call the meeting to order. It is 6:45 on August 18th, 2021, the second session of our Commissioner's Budget presentation. Will you all please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All commissioners are present with the exception of Brian Ames and Commissioner Noel Madore. First item on our agenda is Section 1020, Commissioners. Mr. Post?
Okay, I would ask Amy from NAPCOG to come up, but except that my presentation is going to be very short, I think. The Commissioner's budget went from 187 to 199. Part of that, of course, is salary and wages. Professional fees, I added a couple thousand. Obviously, we're starting to spend more money on legal, as you've seen. But that includes legal and other professionals, like architects, engineers, or whatever. The dues, we're anticipating those will increase by 1,000. Then we come down to statutes and references. Those continue to go up. I had a couple hundred there. Furniture and fixtures, I have a chair that's currently falling apart, and office equipment is in case something happens with my printer, which is several years old.
Okay. And does that conclude?
That concludes the Commissioner's budget.
Okay.
My next one is human resources. Human resources budget has been $4,100 for the last however many years since I've been here. And then this year I did add $1,000 for training, so that brings it to $1,500.
Okay. And is that all? Okay. Do we have any questions for the administrator?
Madam Vice Chair,
Yes, Commissioner?
I'd like to see meals on the Commissioner's budget brought back to $200 for the common budget. And for lodging to drop to $400.
Again, this is the same as all of the other departments. We're looking at gearing back up next year for in-person meetings. I happen to be one that does not find Zoom meetings very efficient or very enlightening. So,
Thank you, sir. Or anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Post. Okay, and next on our agenda is 2002 AVCOG. Section 2002 in your binder.
this is Amy Landry, part of the Executive Director of AVCOG. She has got an improved version of the material that you have in your packet, which I will pass out. And I'm sort of sorry that Commissioner McGrath left the meeting because he is the representative to AVCOG, and he could better tell you the advantages of being a member. That having been said, I'll turn it over to Amy.
Thank you. So again, Amy Landry, I'm the Executive Director at AVCOG. What Larry is passing around, you did receive in your packet, but what I did is I added some sheets in the middle that kind of go through some of the items that have occurred over the last year. So I think it's helpful to kind of get examples. It certainly is not comprehensive of everything that we do, but it is trying to highlight some of the major programs that we operate. So again, for your reference, AvCog does serve the 3 counties of Androscoggin, Franklin, and Oxford, all of the municipalities within those, and primarily 3 major functional areas: economic development, transportation, and planning. So in your packet, you see kind of our budget. So you can look at budget. What's being discussed tonight to be included in the budget would be the annual assessment, which you can see is a small portion of AvCog's overall budget. It is a small portion, but I would emphasize that those funds are critical to the work that we do, because a lot of these programs that I'm going to highlight for you, would not be possible without dollars to leverage and match those programs. So if we don't have funds like that, we have no unrestricted funds within our organization. They are all restricted to programs, and we need a lot of match. So, they don't necessarily fully fund a program. By having those dollars available, we can leverage bringing down federal funds, state funds to do the work that we do. So I'll just highlight some of the things over the last year. Again, this is over just the last 12 months. So, things that have happened before that are included. I'm just highlighting those. So one of the major programs that we worked with over the last year in response to COVID was administering and carrying out the Maine Economic Recovery Grant Program. That was a grant program to CARES Act funds that went to the state of Maine. With those funds, that was provided to the regional organizations like AvCog to support business in that time of the pandemic. So just to highlight, just in Androscoggin County alone, in the last year, through that program, we processed 178 applications, and we granted to 162 businesses in Androscoggin County alone $7.46 million. So that's just one program in response. We also did administer a smaller program through the state's Community Development Block Grant Program, where we were given an allocation to support small businesses that they qualified separately, because they're really for smaller businesses with less than 5 people, one of which has to be an owner, and they have to meet income eligibility requirements. So it's was a little bit more restrictive. But in that program alone, we served 25 Androscoggin County businesses for a total of $124,000 in response to pandemic, which means that they had to demonstrate a loss due to COVID, whatever way that was. So those were 2 important programs this year to support economic activity and the businesses within the county. On our everyday, I guess I would say, basis, we have the Small Business Development Center program. This is a program that we have 2 one-on-one business advisors who provide free one-on-one business advising. They do business plan development, loan packaging, projections for businesses. They work one-on-one, hand-holding them throughout that process, whether they're a startup that is considering a new business or they're a company that's looking to expand. So you can kind of see the numbers, and I won't say them all, they're highlighted here, but they served 472 clients in Androscoggin County in that period of time. That was an uptick due to COVID, but it's typically around 350 that they will serve. So that was a one-on-one direct support to those businesses. We also directly lend through our loan program, so we have a variety of sources of loan funds that we lend, and then we recapitalize those funds to lend again. With that, we have 18 currently active loans in Androscoggin County, $1.3 million lent out to those businesses. That's just our regular program. That's not COVID related, either one of those that I just mentioned. They're just our typical program that we would support small business in any way, not necessarily related to COVID. One item is the regional tourism promotion that we do. So we work with Maine Lakes Mountains Tourism Council, which is a council that's made up of all of the chambers that are in those 3 counties. And they do regional promotion. So they do a guidebook, they do outreach, they are targeting New England states to visit Maine, to promote Maine as a destination. So that is something that we do on a comprehensive collaborative basis with all of the chambers. I won't touch on too much of the planning work, but one of our primary responsibilities is also to develop, and Larry's familiar with this term, a comprehensive economic development strategy. So it's looking at our entire three-county region. And it kind of goes to the point that the Mayor Levesque was saying tonight of collaborating with the county, but it's on a more regional basis. So it's identifying, projects, programs, priorities, looking at what we can do as a region together in a collaborative way. So we are embarking on a new five-year strategy that will look at that. It will look at it on a tri-county level. And it will also examine some components of resiliency. How do we make our region more resilient to any threat that comes our way, whether that be another pandemic, hopefully not, or a natural disaster, anything like that. So how do we become more resilient as a region to support our business community, our municipalities, our residents? So that's something that we'll be embarking on shortly, as we just received an RFP for consultant services to assist us with that work. On the back, Northern Border Regional Commission, that's a four-state commission that was established at the federal level that we assist municipalities and other organizations who are looking to apply for grant funding to implement projects that are eligible for, and they're really infrastructure-related projects. So it could be road projects, it could be wastewater, sewer, it could be trail development. But our role is to really help them through that process, help them with the applications, providing that technical assistance. And then lastly, in economic development is our brownfields program. And you can see highlighted here are just the projects that we've done in the Androscoggin County since 2015. It's over $400,000 in assessment money, which means we get a grant that we can use to assess sites for environmental contamination. So oftentimes these sites are underutilized. People don't want to redevelop on them because they don't know what's on them. So this program allows us to use grant funds to assess those sites. And then if it is needed, they could also apply to our revolving loan fund to clean up the site. So oftentimes it could be a site that's been vacant for few years, 10 years. Somebody wants to redevelop it, but really without that assessment and without that support, it might not be able to happen because it would just be too cost prohibitive for them to do that work. So this grant really helps them get that project on the tax roll, serving the community and back in productive use. That's what the point of that program is. So I'll quickly go through planning. Planning generally is anything related to municipal technical assistance related to comprehensive plans, land use, zoning, ordinance development. Our planning staff works directly with municipalities on that work. So whether it be a planning board or a code enforcement officer, they work with them every day. We also do. Currently, we're working with Poland on their comprehensive plan, and that's the work that our planning staff focuses on. We do GIS mapping, like that map that's sitting on the wall. We do that for a variety of different reasons, shoreline zone maps, anything that a community might want while they're doing their planning work is something else we would provide. Household hazardous waste is really environmental protection, collecting the household hazardous waste, so that's available to municipalities. We administer that. The joint purchasing program for road salt, which typically saves communities. Really the cost, it really is at least typically 10% less than where they could find it elsewhere. So by jointly purchasing that on a regional basis, we have competitive pricing for that. Solid waste is really, again, an environmental program where our staff is working with transfer station operators. They're providing training and resources for them, developing new programs for collection of pharmaceutical waste, We have a textile recovery program where they collect textiles to be recycled, and so that's really the environmental piece. And lastly, our transportation programs. We staff both the Androscoggin Transportation Resource Center, which receives federal funds for road improvements in Lewiston, Auburn, Lisbon, and Sabattis. Those funds are then go through a policy committee a technical committee who prioritizes those projects, and then a policy committee who then allocates those funds that come to us for those projects. So we have staff that oversee that entire process and work with those committees. And lastly, the Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee, we staff that. We receive all of the federal funds that are used to operate the CityLink bus system. So that is, a Lewiston Auburn bus system that is overseen by a committee that we staff, and we receive the federal funds to operate it. Of course, with LATC contracting for that service through Western Maine. So that's really our transportation. I mean, there's a lot of other components of that, but I'll just leave it at that. And then you'll just see a couple of examples of some support and fiscal services that we do. And I highlight some of the entities that we do that for as a service to them, including Western Maine Managers Association, and then some local agencies like the Androscoggin River Watershed Council, the Good Food Council of Lewiston Auburn. We provide fiscal services to them. So I'll kind of stop there. As I said, it doesn't touch on, the residents that call us every day or want to know how to get rid of the paint in their basement or, things like that. Or the business that might not be represented here on a dollar figure because they didn't get a grant, but we're answering questions and providing technical assistance to them all the time. That's what we do. We always want people to be sent to us. If a municipality can't help them, that's what we're there for, is to assist the town in directing somebody to the appropriate program or resource. So that's what we do every day.
Thank you, Ms. Landry. Does anyone have any questions for the director? No?
No, it's very, no.
Thank you so much.
I know it's a lot, but I just wanted you to have it so you can take it with you, and feel free if you have any questions as you're going through it. I'm available by email, by phone to answer any questions at any time.
Yeah, we appreciate it very much. Thank you, Ms. Landry. Oh, Commissioner Poirier.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
We haven't given you any money this year yet, is that correct?
Well, we pay in September.
Yeah.
Oh,
So our
okay,
dues
all
are
right.
due
I'm new on,
Yeah, it gets a little bit confusing because we
because I'm looking at
assess.
this and it's like we.
They don't ask, we don't pay, so they ask in September, that's what we do.
Yeah, so what he actually has in there is we set our dues assessments in December. The executive committee does that by formula. And we assess it actually almost a full year ahead of time, so it's not due until the following September.
And I will mention just the 7750, that is a pretty good estimate that Amy and I talked about, but they don't actually set that until December, so it may be up or down.
Right. It could be either way.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you very much, Ms. Landry.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for coming.
You too.
Okay. Next on our agenda, we have our Emergency Management Agency.
If I could move
Okay.
IT up, Doug has a long
Okay.
interview tonight, and
Sure.
if I could move him
Sure.
so that he can.
I didn't ask for it. Sure.
Step right up, Doug.
You know how it works. Oh, I gathered all my stuff. You've been quicker to the podium.
Step right up. Section 1060 in your binder.
How are you all tonight?
Thank you. How are you?
So I think I could just go right down through the line item by line item. That's probably the best use of the time. Not a lot of changes, a little bit under the 2021 budget. There are a couple of things that I think are going to be a little bit less next year. By and large, it's mostly the same. I'll start with the IT consulting. The program that I envisioned last year was to go up to bid for a block or contract of regular services. As it turns out, it's been much more effective for me to use small projects and sign contracts using those funding resources throughout the calendar year. And it looks like we're going to be right on the number by the end of the current calendar year to what I projected there. And that's been a very effective use of those resources to go out and reach for somebody based on a need that I have, not somebody that is going to be contracted for the entire year without necessarily knowing what might come. So I'd like to recommend we continue with that resource. So I've actually used the projection through the end of the year and I rounded that off. That's why the number's a little bit different, but that's based on projected current year's business. Telephone, again, is something that I just projected out to the end of the year. We're a little bit below the number that I budgeted last year, so I carried that forward into 2022. Repairs to equipment, I had asked for $6,250 last year, and that was in anticipation of what I saw was a significant collection of equipment that could be repurposed, a life extended, and that's what we've been doing. We took a server that had failed about a year ago back in May, and I was able to rehabilitate that and add some storage to it, and that's currently serving as our DR or backup system right now. I expect to get about another year of service out of that. Other examples like that as well, where I've been able to take equipment that had been retired or had broken down and restore it with some repair parts and get back into service. The good message there is that I'm actually finally running out of things that are basically laying around that could be repaired. So I don't expect a lot of repair expense of that nature next year. It's going to go down because those big pieces have already been done. Service contracts has been mostly rated in line with what we budgeted last year. I would tell you that throughout the course of my 12 or 14 months working here, every month or every week I see something that I didn't know about before. But thankfully, as far as things that need money for support that either had lapsed or not been budgeted, that's been pretty limited. There was a couple of pieces of software that I wasn't aware of that I felt did need to be covered. So that's why that's driving that $1,000, $1,163 increase. In a similar vein, I found an additional router firewall device that I wasn't aware that we were still using for a connection to the 911 network. I had to renew that, and there was one other item in there, small item in there. That's what's driving that $100 increase in 4675. The other items are small dollar amounts. I'll just jump right down to the bottom: computer hardware and software. I would have, except for the expected availability of ARP funds later this year, I would have had a number of hardware allocations that I would have recommended that we do next year. At this point, we believe that those 3 projects that I have envisioned are all going to qualify underneath the language that there is given me in terms of what are qualifying for ARP funds. So we were able to move those projects out, and that results in asking for about $7,000 less next year for capital, computer hardware and software. And the bulk of that number is just for next year's lease installment on the 5-year lease that we have on our server environment that's on last year. And that's pretty much a summary of where we are. It's basically, I think, overall very flat.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Butler?
One question. In the news, there's been a lot of talk about ransomware. So do we have penetration testing?
We haven't done that yet. What I would say is that we do have a project that we haven't struck on yet to have an assessment done of our entire environment, and include not just the hardware and the software, but also processes. And we would expect the report that comes out of that to give us a recommendation for what we need to do to improve, to change, add, discontinue, that sort of thing. I would expect that a pen test program would be in there, in that recommendation. But I don't feel like I want to jump up in front of that assessment and just start doing pen testing until we get a recommendation that says that's funds that we ought to expect.
So we don't have any funding for that
Not,
currently?
not in this budget right here, but I would tell you that that's generally not a very, very expensive proposition. And so I feel confident that could come under the IT consulting line.
One thing we did do last year, and Doug can help me out here, there was an assessment, some kind of an assessment done through the risk pool, the MCCA, that they did this assessment. There was very few things that they found wrong, and
Yeah,
Mr. Butler fixed them all.
Well, the assessment that Larry's referring to, it was an assessment of the website, and they do a pen test or a vulnerability assessment of the website, and they did find a few things. We turned it over to our hosting vendor, got those resolved with the cooperation of one of our other vendors that handle some of our security certificates. So, but I think to your question about the pen testing, that is something that, to my mind, would fit right into that IT consulting. That's where I would, if I were asked to do that tomorrow, that's where I would write that line out.
Well, in my previous life, I'll tell you the truth, I used to spend tons of money on that constantly. I'd hire people to penetrate our system, and then I'd hire people to check the people who had tried to penetrate my system. So it can add up pretty fast, or at least it did for my business. I really think we should bring that front and forward because, I mean, the problem with that type of expenditure is somewhat like buying insurance, you know, till you have a fire, then you realize how important it was to have fire insurance. Penetration testing is important, and they're becoming more rampant, and I really would like to see us get something done
I'll take that aside. Certainly take that
sooner
aside.
than later.
Sure.
I'm not going to tell you when to do it, but I'm just going to say.
That would be part of the internet security, which I think is eligible under the ARPA money.
I would agree with that. That's based on the language that Larry provided about what we expect to be qualifying.
So as soon as you improve the ARP money, we'll get started.
Get us some proposals, because like I said, I used to pay dearly, we paid dearly in the organization I worked with.
Well, and on that score, depends on exactly what your definition of pen testing is, right? So there's white hat pen testing, there's automated testing that can be done. The ones that I'm most familiar with are things like Qualys, which is a monthly scan that is done on an automated fashion. But you can, to your point, you can hire a firm like Tyler Cybersecurity to come in and do a lot of in-person interviewing and assessments of that nature, and that is, of course, a much more costly. It's people. It involves services, really, and that is a more costly approach. So again, it depends on exactly what you got in mind in terms of penetration testing, what we're talking about, whether it's a white hat hacker or social engineering or that kind of thing.
We have any other questions for Mr. Butler?
Madam Chair, or Vice Chair.
Yes.
I would just, I concur with Commissioner Poyer's concerns. Do we have, it sounded like from you though that it's relatively inexpensive to have a backup system in place. So I'm just wondering why maybe perhaps we couldn't just, if it is so inexpensive, to just get that backup system in place, because without going into detail, we have a lot of critical information here. Maybe there's multiple systems, and certainly I'm not asking you to go into detail, then just hopefully a confirmation that there is some sort of backup so that we're not on our knees.
Yeah, so penetration testing is completely separate from backup and disaster recovery. I have spent quite a bit of time and made some financial expenditures on that score. Two things. One is I mentioned that I rehab the legacy server, so that provides us a disaster recovery capability. If we lose the computer room in the basement, I've got replicas of all those same workloads running on that other equipment, which will eventually be moved to the Emergency Management Agency offices in Lewiston. That's disaster recoverability capability. Then separately, as far as data backups, I've instituted a tape backup scenario where we've actually got legacy copies of our data on tape that's physically out of the environment, and that's a different approach. So those are different areas that we are covering today that we've done out of some of this improvement that I've done of spending these repair funds in the current year.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
And next on our agenda, we have our Emergency Management Agency. Step right up. Section 1010 in your binder.
I'm always last.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Sort myself. So, good evening. I'm Lena, Director of Androscoggin County Emergency Management Agency, here to present the EMA Department's budget for this evening. The budget request is $227,000. The increase from last year to this is due in part to increases in salary, training, and the purchase of a dual band P25 base radio for our communications room.
If I may just interject, I think for last year, off the top of my head, the requested budget was 218,000, and it was cut to 205, so just to be clear.
So what I can do is go down my line. I do want to point out in my narrative, there was a line that was omitted, and that is in the repair and maintenance section. And that would be, it is in the budget, but it's not in the narrative, and I apologize for that. And that would be line 10, 7325, furniture and fixtures. That was $1,700. So I spoke about the increase in salary, and that's just the steps, and then the thing we are fully staffed with 4 staff members. Travel, we did not use travel money due to COVID, but this will be a necessary expense moving forward now that meetings are opening up and in person, and we are required to attend these meetings in person, such as going to facilities, actually viewing the facility, attending tabletops at the facilities, things like that. Yep. Training and exercise. So the big item here is I'm requesting $10,000 for training and exercise, and this is to support the local communities, maintain NIMS compliance, and also trainings for the local fire, police, whatever the town's request. These are separate from the HSGP specific trainings. So that's why you see this here. Equipment. Here, this is where you can see the dual band P25 compliant base radio, along with other the UPS. Those seem to die on us. Yes. Yep.
Yes, that's in the communications in your budget.
7310. Supply costs, office supplies and clothing, repair, maintenance is really the one thing here, or 2 things. Is the 2,500, and that is 4610, and this is to replace the current lighting with flush mount fixtures. I hope someday you come and visit, and when you do, unfortunately you'll see our ceiling is shadowed, and actually it's a very dark environment, and so it's kind of difficult for folks who've experienced that. And so what we're looking to do is similar to this right here, flush mount fixtures. And actually, last year, facilities worked out a deal where they replaced the balusters with LED lighting, and that did improve it somewhat and actually saved us money. So now we just like to put the fixtures up into the ceiling. And then the item that I just spoke about that wasn't added is the furniture line, which
is 7325, and that's 1,700. And what this is actually, working again with facilities, we now have an EOC set up where we have stations. We did not anticipate that our stations don't fit the tables. So we need more depth. And so working with facilities, I believe they're going to help us build tables that will work for that space and the equipment. It's just not deep enough. Kind of the screens here, but the
Keyboard?
thank you. Keyboard is just right on top. It's just not deep enough.
Essentially, what they have is the same size tabletop you have. So a picture monitor and a keyboard.
Less. Yeah. No, yeah, actually it is. Yep. And then there we run to contractual, which is, electricity, gas, storage, and this is based off of last year's numbers and anticipating moving forward. Also included in that is computer software and hardware equipment, which is the GIS licensing, $1,000. Maintenance of $1,500, Zoom and Teams, because when we can, we will attend meetings via Teams or Zoom. I think that's it.
Okay.
Questions?
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Molina? Yes, Commissioner Boyer? Oh, okay.
The EOC training, again, and
Yes.
exercise, could you, we haven't spent any money in 2020 or 21, or asked for any money. Could you just update me as to why we're going to suddenly spend $10,000 this year? I just want to make sure I understand why.
Well, we are building our training and exercise program. We've been able to kind of get away with doing the 402 MIMS. There's been an instructor that's been nice enough to not charge us for that. We did have other monies that we spent down. How do I explain that? Monies that we had to spend down, and I used those. Those are now expended. We no longer have those funds to use. So now I need to look toward my budget to do that. And as you see in the narrative, I speak of building towards a full-scale exercise, and this is to benefit the local departments, and my hope is to do this annually. And so there are trainings that are, at some times, will be necessary to prepare these locals. They may ask for additional training leading up to that exercise. I'm also using other grant money to be able to complete one of these annual exercises.
Another question. My understanding is you're located in the Williston Fire Station, is that correct?
In the basement.
In the basement.
Yep.
And approximately how many square feet do you use there?
Oh, we looked at that, wasn't that 4,800?
I was going to say 5,000. but-
Yeah, roughly 45,000 square feet.
And we don't seem to pay rent to the city of Williston?
We pay utilities.
We pay utilities. So
We
they get
pay a
some-
portion of the utilities.
They pay a portion of the utilities. So maybe this is more question for the city of Williston. What is their benefit to put you, to keep you there? Why do they want to give you such a deal?
It was worked out, I think, in the mid-90s, that the percentages were worked out in an agreement a long time ago, and we're just sticking with that.
Thank you.
Plus, they get to see me every day.
Commissioner O'Leary, you had a question?
Thank you. On that, $10,000 exercise,
Yes.
is that something required by federal or state law?
So, hospitals, LAPC members, facilities are required to run annual exercises, so these exercises benefit those folks as well.
And so it benefits us, it benefits the fire, the responders, fire, police. So yes, it is a requirement of theirs. It helps them, helps us to maintain preparedness.
But they're not required to do it with, Scott County, they can do it on
We
their
are
own.
one of the agencies that they would involve, yes.
But they can integrate their own exercise if they chose to do it at a different time.
I suppose they could, but they would want to integrate EMA. And it is a responsibility of EMA to host and hold these exercises.
Could I ask them why we never budgeted for it before, if it was, and I realize, there's transitions, so I'm just trying to understand why it was required, why it's a big chunk of money.
I can't speak to that, why it wasn't before. But our EOC is now ready to host these. We worked with IT and facilities to get the facility, that sounds funny, but to get the department up to the level in which we can host these types of events.
I would like to see that line zeroed out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Molino? Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have facilities. Item 1040 in your binder. Mr. Cody, take it away.
All right. I'm not going to introduce myself, everybody knows me. If anybody wants to watch this recording, I'm David Cody, I'm the facility director here at the county. I manage all the nuts and bolts that goes through the walls and floors of the buildings. So the salary and the 4015 line, which is the architect and engineering fees, it's almost a $2,000 transition move. So last year, the $2,000 you see was actually in the salary line. All I did is reallocate it to a different line to separate the real differences between a temp agent or Martin.
I think I had to move that back to the salary line because there wasn't another line for that payment.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, we did separate it so we could tell the differences between temporary help and staff. And I use them essentially for like sweeping the parking lot. Every spring we have the dirt, in the driveways we have a sweep. I've had it done by private companies in the past, and they were like $1,200 to come sweep the parking lot. I figure I'd rather use some temp service, get them the money, keep it local, and plus they can do more than just sweep the parking lot while they're here. And that's what they've been doing. They've been keep cleaning the outside, raking the leaves, sweep the parking lots. We had them paint windows, a lot of stuff that my guys just don't have time for. Moving on down to electricity, rates are going up, but again, I don't know the rates until this come November. I'm hoping that they don't go up too much, but that should cover what we spent last year and maybe break even. Gas, we did use a little bit less than what we anticipated last year, so I'm hoping the same for this year, so I brought it down to $5,000. Sewage, same idea, we didn't use as much as I had budgeted, so I brought that down to $1,100. Water, brought it up 100. Telephone, because we added a new personnel last year, I brought this up to match his employment. Moving on down to software, hardware, because the computer we're getting for the next person in my department doesn't need the same quality as what I bought. I did have to bring it down by a couple $100 because he doesn't need the same class. The one that we bought last year, I'm using all that to do all the meetings. Again, the next one won't be the same caliber. Moving on down, cleaning disinfectant. This year was a pretty good hit. We're cleaning more. Again, we're trying to create new habits. We're cleaning more, much more. So I increased by $500. Besides that, products are going up a lot. Maintenance supplies, again, products are going up. As you all heard, press 2x4 has gone through the roof. And this is just to help offset some of those costs. Uniforms, clothing, by adding an extra person, we had to increase it just a little bit to $50 to help with that. Tools and implements, I did bring that down $1,000. Last year we had it up because we wanted a table saw. We bought the table saw, so we brought it back down to our normal $1,000 a year. And then the building improvement line is $17,300, and that's based on my capital. And let's see, capital, which I should know. It's to increase our security cameras that we have right now. We're missing pretty much, I really don't want to say out of line. We're missing some key areas of the building that needs to be covered. We are Superior Courthouse, and we should be covering all the hot spots as well. This should add to $12,000, and then the rest is the county truck reserve line. So that hopefully next year, the year after, we'll have enough money to buy a truck. Whether it's new or used, we'll decide at that point when there's enough money. And then $25,000 to go to a reserve account for future needs. On the whole, my budget is only 0.5% increase based on my normal operating budget, and the difference is my capital improvements.
One of the things we did, you took out $20,000 for flooring and $50,000 for roof, and we're going to put that into the ARP revenue loss application, which we've already approved. Yes, I think. So that's why that could stay the same.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Cody? No? Thank you, sir.
Sure, you're welcome.
What a fabulous evening. Thank you for all you do.
Madam Chair, could I ask one question, if you would, please? Ms. Cody, maybe there's some sort of reason why I'm sure why we couldn't potentially have the inmate later help out with those areas.
I used to do quite a bit, and laws kept coming out, changing, and I can no longer get inmates of that caliber. I would love to. I used to use them daily. And hopefully again sometime soon.
Is that preventing you from doing it since it's so technical or so
just getting them out of the jail to work, period. It doesn't matter
so
what
the
it
law
is.
makes it hard for you to actually do that, yeah? Okay.
I used to have a program with some judges where I would get people sentenced to me, but even that's limited.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Cody? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I apologize, I have to leave.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
Okay, and next, Clarice, is it safe to assume that you're doing the rest of the?
The rest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Last one on the list. All right, so my regular treasurer's budget, and it's getting late, so I'm gonna just do this quickly. There's some ups and some downs. I tried to reduce some, had to increase some. The ones that I probably should mention, there's talk that my training's coming back, although who knows. But I did bring back my lodging just to cover that. Software, hardware maintenance, our current software that we're on right now has increased their maintenance. So I'm actually going to be a little bit over budget this year's current year because they didn't bother to let me know. The software that you approved for us to get runs the same as what their increase is. So either way, that $13,000 should cover. Printing and engraving, I was able to break down. Training and education, I brought down, even though we have new software, the training should be included in the price. Printing and reproduction is down. And the big increase is the computer software hardware line. That is actually a printer, copier, scanner. The one we have is no live, probably 15 years old at least. We can't scan more than two times in a row and it jams. The maintenance person is from the BEU, from our maintenance place is always there. And we just do a lot of volume stuff. I mean, and it's really cutting into productivity. So I'm hoping that we can get a new one this year. So that's really the big highlights of that one.
Okay. Do we have any questions regarding the treasurer's budget?
Madam Chair, Vice Chair, I would just request that lodge be lowered down to 400 as well. Thank you.
Any other questions for the treasurer?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Would we be, I assume we put up the bid for the copier, current scan copier, we see competitive bids?
Yeah, I've already asked Doug actually to reach out, and he's gotten some for me.
Okay, yeah, because some of them get you on per page, per year,
Well,
crazy
that,
contracts, or
that
others
will,
use it other way.
sorry, didn't mean to.
No.
That would actually fall right into our current maintenance and would be no change in cost.
Okay. Any other questions? Moving on to auditing, section 1090 in your binder.
I've talked to our auditor and he's not expecting any increase for this time, so I've left that as is.
Awesome. Section 2000, or section 2000, interest.
Interest. So even though this year we haven't used a lot of the interest money due to we have actually revenue in there, not revenue, but cash in there from the federal funds. So, but the interest rates are going up according to our banker. I've talked to him. He expects them to go up. I don't really dare to cut that because it really depends on all the timing of taxes and jail funding. And I would be worried if we cut that and not have enough money for interest. So I left it as is.
Fabulous.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just a question on that, and I'm not on council, so please forgive me, but do we have that, the federal money in like a separate, like account within our overall account so that I recognize savings and I'm hoping that as taxpayers we can realize some of those savings from interest, but I see that, but is there some sort of risk if it's in the same pot that the federal government is using for the wrong reasons? I know it's not done intentionally.
Yeah, so what we've done is, it is in a separate account. What I put into our general fund account is the same amount I have available in TAN. So at any moment, if for whatever reason we needed that money to go back into the federal money, it's there. I'm not using more than what we can immediately replace. I'm just trying to save taxpayers interest money. Does that make sense?
And understood and appreciated, just trying to make sure that, because sometimes the federal government is 40, and then there's another 4,000 pages somewhere else.
Yeah, right. No, I made sure that I have the amount in TAN left to cover that.
Thank you.
That we used, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Moving on to 2025 employee benefits.
Okay. So, as far as the health and dental, it's really hard. It's really a guessing game because we don't know what they're going to select if we have new employees, if it's going to be family or if it's going to be single. So what I've done is, without knowing how much it will go up for rates, because we won't know that until much later, I have looked at current usage, at who has got what right now, and I increased it by 5% on top of that. And this is the number. So if we have more of an increase in health than 5%, and a lot of people choose family, then we will not make it. But that's worst case. So this is the number I've come up with in my calculations.
Do you have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Porter?
Looking at health and dental insurance, year to date, we've spent $964,000. And you're figuring on 5% increases.
Right now, this is one that you got, usually we reserve kind of to change it at the end if we find out different.
Yeah, I know
Because
you
we don't know
You have no
until
control
November, I
over
think it
it.
is.
Yeah, it's generally November when
Yeah,
we're told what that
Okay.
increases.
yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Is this presuming on a 3% cost of living allowance and steps for both union and non-union?
All of that is in.
Okay, so if it was lower, that would be reflected at a different amount.
No, health and dental insurance doesn't.
Yeah, that's not
That's
health and dental.
totally separate from.
It's a set amount, it doesn't matter how much they make.
But the PERS would be affected, correct?
Main PERS is, I believe, 10% of their earnings, so yeah,
Okay.
generally.
I would like to see us do it at 2.5%. I appreciate the work of all the staff. I just recognize that there were jobs to be able to come to, whereas many people lost their jobs through no fault of their own, but through state and federal mandates. So I would like to see that move to 2.25%. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Okay, moving on to our last item, insurance, section 2050.
And this is another one, we don't have the final amount yet from the insurance company. I've increased the liability insurance by 5% and workers' comp by 1%, but until I get the numbers back, I don't know for sure.
Okay, do you have any questions? Okay. So seeing no other matters before the commission, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much.